Welcome to Back on the Broomstick,
A modern witch's spoken word grimoire.
where two witchy friends from way back are reconnecting to their pagan roots after a long period of mundanity.
We're rewalking the path of the wise and trying out all the latest spells, rituals, and magical theory in today's witchcraft and pagan practices.
So grab your wand and your incense
Your cauldron and your crystals
and join us
as we get
back on the broomstick.
Hi, and welcome to Back on the Broomstick. I'm Layla, and on this episode, we'll be talking about the recent blood moon and a few of our favorite gods and goddesses.
And I am Chelle, and my main goal for this blood moon is to be awake for it.
The blood moon happened in the early hours of Friday morning, March 14th, and it was a full moon with an eclipse, and that's what made it look red, which is how it got the name blood moon.
I had a funny with this whole thing because people were asking, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I just had a flashback. Remember that time when I don't even remember what was happening? It was some like meteor shower that like only happened once every couple billion years. And you made me get out of bed at like 4 in the morning, climb up on your roof, which,
Right.
by the way, I have a fear of heights. And you make me get on your roof and watch this meteor shower at like 4 or 5 in the morning. And
I
and this was
remember
very
that.
reminiscent of that because I was like, man, I gotta stay awake for this.
All right, listeners, let's go back to the ancient times when Shell was my roommate. We lived together for a little while in a little town in upstate New York. We lived in this, I'd swear, the person who lived there before us was probably a witch or an herbalist of some type because the backyard was about an acre and it had a whole bunch of apple trees and so many different herbs that at the time I did not appreciate as
Your
well as I
backyard
should
was
have.
a jungle, just say it.
It was amazing. Great place to do ritual. And actually, we did do ritual there when the local newspaper came to do
We
an article.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's pictures of that backyard, but it was a one-story ranch and the roof wasn't that difficult to get up on. There was a meteor shower and I woke you up at like 4 a.m. And listeners of this show know Shell does not do mornings.
I don't, and I don't like heights either. And you can tell the people it was one story, fine. But I really thought I was gonna plunge to my death anyway.
Yeah, but you didn't though.
I
You
didn't.
didn't die. But you did see cool meteors.
I do credit your husband for my safety, though. I'm just saying. It was worth it, but at the time, I'm like, you're gonna make me get up and do what?
And you're glad now that you did, though, right?
Right. So me staying up for the eclipse, worth it. But in the moment, I was like, man, I'm tired.
Me too. And that is why I took some steps ahead of time to ensure my success. I really, really wanted to do something for this blood moon. Things have been a little crazy in both of our lives lately, and I'm ready for it to settle down and get back into, I want to get back on the broomstick. I'm ready to get back into my witchy happy space. So I set an alarm for 2:30 in the morning and I set everything up outside because I'm also not the greatest morning person. So I had everything all set up outside. I have a little fire pit in my backyard, so I made sure everything was all laid. Everything I would need for the little fire that I wanted to do was all right there. Made sure my fluffiest bathrobe was nearby. That way everything was set.
You're so organized. I love it.
6 p.m. me is organized, but 2:30 a.m. me is pissed off and cranky and really cold and wants to go back to bed.
Right?
So unless everything's laid out for her, she's not going to do it.
But as I learned from you with the rooftop meteor shower, there are certain things that are worth dragging your dead ass out of bed for.
Absolutely. And I've found that if you set things up, like that night, we had the ladder all set up before we went to bed.
Yeah.
We made sure that there were snacks and flashlights and, of course, a little bit of weed. Everything was all set and laid out for us, so we didn't have to think about it too much. Makes it easier.
Yeah. And I was a little concerned because people were on the old interweb. People were saying you can't do like any sort of magic because it's a blood moon and it's like evil and whatever.
No moons were harmed in the making of this blood moon, I
Right.
promise. It's just an eclipse.
What was it that they thought that ate the sun during solar eclipses? Didn't they think like a
Oh,
dragon or something ate the sun?
yeah. I guess it depends on what culture, whether it was like a dragon or a worm or a crow, or there's a whole bunch of different ones.
Well, nobody ate the moon either.
Nope, they didn't. It came back. And the good thing about eclipses is the spell that I wanted to do during the eclipse was kind of a what some people would maybe call a road opening spell. It's kind of a let things be a little easier, clear the way, I guess. Help clear the path that I'm walking so that I can walk it a little better kind of spell. And so an eclipse is a great time to do that. The moon is full and gorgeous, and then the earth kind of lumbers in the way and becomes an obstacle, blocking the light of the sun. And then after a little while, the earth gets out of the way, clearing the path essentially for the sunlight to shine directly on the moon again. So that was the focus of my spell. Did you do anything for the blood moon?
I didn't really have a spell per se, but we had a listener on our Facebook discussion group that was going to do a justice spell for this
Ooh.
moon. And I don't know, for some reason I felt compelled to like focus her some energy for her justice spell. So
Oh.
you know who you are. You got some of my mojo.
That is an excellent time. I think that a full moon coming into that full power, like ramping up to that big, huge, amazing full moon power. If you need justice, you want the biggest guns you got, right? You want the
Right?
biggest magical slingshot you can grab, and the full moon is it. And like with my kind of road opener spell, justice is the same thing. You want justice to prevail, you want the light to shine again. So I can very much see how an eclipse could help with justice energy.
You want that clarity, the lifting of the fog, so to say.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Getting out of the way of the light. Full moons are wonderful, especially this time of year. Oh my goodness. The spring equinox, Ostara is next week. I'm absolutely in love with this time of year.
You know what else is coming up?
What?
You and I being at Sacred Space.
I cannot wait for that either. Okay. Full moon today with an eclipse. Next week is the spring equinox. And the
And
week after
then
that, Sacred Space Conference in Townsend, Maryland. I am really, really excited.
we will be together. We will be at a conference. We will have listeners that we can meet. How fabulous.
Christopher Hughes will be there.
I am going to fangirl like nobody's
Mara
business.
Starling.
I am going to fangirl like nobody's business. Fangirl.
Some of our favorite people. Some of the most amazing witches and pagan people. Holy cow.
Not to mention, we are going to reconnect with some of our friends from last year. Very exciting. But I was just thinking about this the other day. Why didn't we decide to get another tattoo this year?
I thought about that, and my excuse was that it took us away for a little while. And I would like this year to just kind of stay and immerse myself. Also, I heard rumors last year that there was a tattoo artist after hours that was there at the conference.
Really?
I don't know if it was true or not.
We need to get into that crowd.
Yes, we do. And if you are going to Sacred Space, send us an email or a DM, let us know. And we're going to try and coordinate everybody at least for a minute to say hi.
Actually, we had a listener ask if we are going to do a meet and greet there. I don't know if I would call it like an official meet and greet, but if you are there, hunt us down, say hi. We will hang out and chat for a few. We just want to meet you.
Email backonthebroomstick@gmail.com and let me know, and I will try to organize something. Otherwise, we were definitely happy for you to just run up and give us a hug for real.
We're going to be there, what, 4 days, 5 days?
4 days.
We've got time to meet you and greet you.
If you are not going to Sacred Space, check them out. It is a wonderful conference for intermediate and advanced practitioners. It happens every year. These workshops are so good. You meet such great people. It's really well run. It's a great conference.
And again, if you are going to be there, Layla and I will be doing a little special thing at 7:30 on Thursday night.
That it's going to be really fun to do. You know how much I love to do meditations.
You and your meditations. Let me guess, you want me to bring a journal too?
Well, yeah.
Actually, I'll be honest with you. I already got one set aside to bring.
I know you have more than one, admit it.
Yeah, stop. Why you gotta call me out like that?
I am evil. Mwahaha.
Now, I had a thought and I'm glad you rolled with it. I was looking around on the internet this week and a lot of talk about deity, a lot of talk about gods and goddesses. Who do you worship? Who do you work with? And that led me to what are, we'll say for the sake of time, top 10 gods or goddesses that you think or we think everybody should be aware of. So I thought that'd be a fun topic for tonight. And it's interesting when I found different people's perspective on the quote unquote top gods and goddesses every witch, pagan person, whoever should be aware of. What do you think about that?
I'll tell you what I think because when you told me that you wanted to do this as a topic, I think I sat in a stupor because there's so many gods and goddesses, and there was no way.
At first, I was like, huh, I could think of that easy. And I made a list. I know we agreed to come up with four or five each, but I like overkill, so I still came up with my own 10. And then I was like, oh, but I forgot this one and I forgot this. I could come up with a list of 20 to be honest.
My brain short circuited, and so I brought it back and I just decided to go with three gods and three goddesses that were very meaningful to me for different reasons.
I do have to mention, if you do Google such things, there are a lot of folks out there that focus strictly on Greek. So I tried to stay away from Greek as much as I could with my list.
I do have one Greek slash Roman goddess, but I'll tell you why when we get to her.
I have a couple, but but they're more my personal preference, so I can't help it. But I am gonna let you go first since I picked the topic. Give me your
Okay.
number one.
All right, I'm going to give you my number one, and I will start with that Roman goddess that I chose. Back when I was in middle school,
A week or
we,
two ago.
a week or two ago, in eighth grade, they gave us different languages. You just took a short little course in, it was
Try it. Yeah, you try it.
tried three, the ones that they would teach in high school: Spanish, French, and Latin. And in the Latin class, one of the things that the teacher did was have everybody change their name. At the very first class, she talked about the Roman gods and goddesses. And she told us about a whole bunch of them. She put pictures up, she had names, she told us all about them. And then she had us pick. She said, research a god or a goddess, and that will be your name for the class.
Can I guess what you picked?
Yeah.
For some reason, I want to say Hera.
Nope. I chose Diana. I chose the goddess of the moon, the goddess of the hunt, the goddess of the wilderness. Now, I was a total nerd as a kid. I was very much into folklore and mythology. So I already kind of knew about Diana, also known as Artemis in the Greek pantheon. So I chose her as my first deity for this list of goddesses because she was my first goddess.
Right?
Like that's the first time I took a name of a deity, even if it was for class. And that really kind of kicked off even stronger of a love for gods and goddesses around the world. And so Diana is a twin goddess. Her brother is the god of the sun, and she's worshipped as a goddess of the hunt. You'll often see her with other maidens with a bow, and she does rule the moon and the moon cycles. And she's a patron of animals and the wilderness, unspoiled places. She's considered a virgin goddess. So if you do follow the maiden mother crone of deity, she's a maiden goddess.
I just need to interject this. When I was in eighth grade, we did a similar thing, but I was in Spanish and I picked my Spanish name as Carmen.
Oh, that's a pretty
Irrelevant to
name.
deity, but Carmen.
Well, I have to thank my Latin teacher. I can't think of her name in eighth grade, but it was her idea. She introduced this idea to the class and we all loved it. So I was Diana for like a month and a half in eighth grade and I loved it.
Nice.
Yeah. She's a very good goddess. She's an easy goddess to look to because she is the moon. She's represented by the moon. And a lot of witches are drawn to the moon. So it's very easy to be drawn to her, especially if you're outside in the woods, full moon. She's a nice goddess to look to.
Now, I'm going to give you my easy answer. The first one on my list is Hecate. Shocker,
Oh, I'm so surprised.
right? I love a good crossroads deity for sure. But my view of Hecate is probably different than a lot. But I kind of see her as like almost like a Ceridwen, which I'll get to in a minute because she's on my list as well.
Mine
But kind
too.
of the witch of all witches, I guess. She's kind of all things to me. Other people might see her as a warrior goddess, goddess of the crossroads, goddess of all witches. But to me, it depends on what I'm working with and what energy she's putting into it. But she's kind of everything to me.
To you, Hecate is the face of the goddess,
Right,
capital the goddess. Okay.
right.
I see that. I love that. She's the goddess of witches. She's the goddess of liminal spaces. She's a very good goddess for anyone to work with.
As long as you can handle the
Yeah, you've
truth.
got to be able
You
to
can't
handle it.
handle the truth. We always Well, I don't want to say we always talk about goddesses, but we focus on goddesses a lot. So I really am actually interested. What would you pick for a god in your top list people should be familiar with?
My number one god, and he was my first experience with deity, and I do think he's very important, but my number one is Cernunnos.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
And actually that's my number one too. But I wrote it and I know people think there are people on two sides of this coin that these two are one and the same, but I have Cernunnos slash the Green Man.
Oh, yes, Cernunnos, the Green Man, and the Horned God are all sometimes, not always, sometimes the same thing.
The same but different.
That's right. They are different. They are different, but they are kind of all aspects of a similar thing. And sometimes Cernunnos is the horned god, and sometimes Cernunnos is the green man, but they're not technically the same thing.
Right, but on my list, I kind of have them as one
And I think the reason why is because they're all gods of the wood, gods of wild places, gods of the
of
forest,
nature.
nature, fertility, of natural cycles. They're gods of primal energy. And they are all very similar. Gods of the green wild spaces.
And kind of how I matched him up as number one with Hecate being number one. They kind of share that God of the crossroads, God of the journey. It's almost like in my mind, they're cohorts.
Cernunnos is also often seen as a god of death. He's part of life's cycle, not necessarily like a death god, but part
Right.
of the whole cycles. And he's what's called sometimes a chthonic god, which basically means he's an under the earth god.
I was going to say, what the hell does that word mean?
Chthonic deities are associated with the underworld. So for Cernunnos, it's because he is nature. All of life and death is his domain.
Like a Hades?
Well, sort of, but chthonic just means they're associated with the underworld and death, not that they're necessarily a death god. And maybe it means under the earth literally, like the Tuatha Dé Danann, like under hill.
I have to say that another god, and I'm glad you mentioned his name, another one I have on my list is Hades. And you want to know why? My children are aware of Hades thanks to Disney.
Yeah, but Disney has him as the goofy bad guy.
They do. They do. With the flaming hair. I did love the flaming hair. But I like the fact that even if not completely accurately portrayed, it put enough seed, like for example, in my kid's head to want to know more. You know what I mean? But I have Demeter on my list as well. And I think the Persephone, Demeter, Hades thing kind of all roll together. I feel like a lot of my on my list are like cohorts, partners.
What you'll find as you go into a lot of these stories and a lot of this folklore, especially when you get into places that are very close. Like I know in some of these European places, a lot of the legends will kind of blend and blur together depending on where you're at. So that happens sometimes, but it's surprising how similar all these different cultures and pantheons can be in what we choose to deify. And the stories are a lot the same.
That is a big problem I have with the Roman and Greek because
Well, they literally stole them.
they are the same people with two different names, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you don't realize that, it's super confusing.
Well, they do have some minor differences and stories associated with them, but it is very cool to see how similar a lot of them can be.
Who's next on your list?
All right, so you mentioned Ceridwen, and Ceridwen is also on my list. Ceridwen was the first deity I dedicated myself to. She is the Welsh goddess of transformation. She's the goddess of the cauldron. She's the goddess of potion. She's the goddess of knowledge and shapeshifting. She's part of the story of Taliesin, of Merlin.
Every time I think of Ceridwen, all I can think of is that picture. You know the picture. We've all seen the picture with the woman with the dark hair and the long staff stirring the cauldron. You know the picture.
That's Ceridwen in her cauldron, exactly.
I kind of look at her as again another goddess of all, like
Yeah.
universal, kind of no matter what your need, she's got your back kind of thing.
Exactly. Well, hey, when you're the goddess of wisdom, you can pretty much pull whatever you need out of your bag of tricks. I think you're that smart, you can do it. But she's also the goddess of prophecy, enchantment, change. She's also another liminal goddess. She can be a goddess of the other world because some people say that her cauldron is of birth and death.
I look at her as a softer version of Hecate. Hecate is very much, you can't handle the truth. And Ceridwen more of the, let me wrap my arm around you and hug you as I tell you the truth. In my opinion, I kind of see her as more of a, maybe it's how I've manifested her in a more caring way. I do. And I know you're looking at me like I'm a crazy mofo, but I do.
Ceridwen is transformation, and transformation is not easy. She's not going to put her arm around you unless it's to push you into her cauldron.
But I see her more as guiding you through that transformation, whereas Hecate's kicking you through it.
She's a mother, which might be where to you that aspect of her might be stronger, is the mother aspect. She does have a son. And she, in her cauldron, was brewing this potion that was going to make him the smartest man on the planet.
Right.
And instead, her assistant, Gwion, got the first 3 drops. And as everybody knows, only the first 3 drops are good. The rest is fucking poison. So don't drink it. So Gwion got the good stuff. And she was so pissed, she decided she was going to kill him. And he used his newfound knowledge to like change himself into other creatures to try and get away. There's actually a very cool song that I love. It's on that playlist I shared with you today. It's called Ceridwen and Taliesin. It's by Dom the Bard, but it tells this story. So she chases him because she wants to kill him, and she eventually eats him and then gives birth to him later. So she destroys him and then gives birth to him as Taliesin.
She's a pissed off mother who then had to go in her corner and calm down. And then
She didn't go in any corner. She chased him across the earth.
I see her softer than Hecate. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, she's the goddess of transformation and knowledge, and apparently of chasing people down until she gets what she wants.
That really kind of fits my personality. I don't know.
But yeah, Ceridwen was my first goddess. I liked that she was the goddess of wisdom, and I was very much seeking wisdom. I still am. I loved that aspect of her. Plus, she is also the goddess of poetry, and I wrote some really shitty poetry when I was in my early teens, so that resonated.
Yeah, but you also wrote some good stuff later on.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you. So, who have you got next?
Next on my list, this is a good one. I've got Odin.
Ooh, Odin. Old One Eye himself.
When I think of Odin, I think of the Hanged Man tarot card.
Ooh, I like that. Yes.
Hanging from the tree, kind of taking it all in, thinking the thing is, think before you act. I think of Odin very much as like a wise grandpa. You know what I mean?
I love how you see the softer side of all the deities except for Hecate. You're just like, Hecate has beaten me down so much that all you guys look like kids.
Pretty much. You spend 30 years with Hecate and everybody else is soft and squishy. But I think Odin kind of brings that wise old man to my list. He's seen it all, he's done it all, and he's more than willing to teach you if you are patient enough to listen.
That's a good one. I like that. I love that aspect of him as well. He's the all father, the all seeing, the all knowing.
But demands patience kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, you can't know it all fast.
How it relates to that card, the Hanged Man, is that he kind of forces you to take a minute and have some introspection. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I love that.
Makes you kind of think about taking that step back for a minute.
I can't think of what deck it is, but I have seen a deck that shows the Hanged Man as the Yggdrasil tree. Sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly, but the world tree, Yggdrasil, and it's Odin hanging upside down from the world tree.
I feel like I might have a deck that has that, yeah.
I can't think of what the deck is called. If any of our listeners know what deck that is, please email us backonthebroomstick@gmail.com. All right, so I've got another god, probably who I go to now a lot. You hear a lot of Greek pantheons, you hear a lot of Celtic.
Right.
This is a Hindu god.
Oh my God, I know what you're going to say because it's on my list too.
Oh, awesome. Okay, go ahead, guess.
Shiva.
Nope. Ganesh.
Oh, damn it.
I do love Shiva. Shiva is the Lord of Bong, and he is, the weed god. I know he's way more than that, but I'm
glad
saying.
that we both had a Hindu one on our list.
It is something that I think is absolutely wonderful and beautiful, and the stories fascinate me. I just think it's absolutely fantastic. And Ganesh appealed to me. Actually, our friend John, who's been on the show before, who was in our coven, shortly after I first met Jonathan, he introduced me to Ganesha, the remover of obstacles. And now this one, if you want someone to put an arm around you, I kind of think Ganesh would. But he's very often seen as very friendly, compassionate. So yeah, he would put his big elephant arm right around
I
you.
was
And
going to say, is that the one depicted as the elephant?
yes, he is the
Okay.
elephant-headed god. He is the
Okay.
son of Shiva and Parvati. So he's a very large man body with an elephant's head with one tusk, and he's often seen with a little mouse at his feet. And from what I learned, the mouse stands for desires and your ego and your unchecked subconscious. And these are all things that Ganesh has overcome, and that's symbolized by him being with this little mousey. The mouse also symbolizes things like other ways to get around. Ganesh is the remover of obstacles, and the mouse is another way to get around obstacles, through little spaces or through cunning or intelligence. So the mouse has a lot of different meaning. And Ganesh is also the god of new beginnings, and he's the god of luck. He helps to clear energy blockages. He is just wonderful. If you need wisdom, if you need success, if you need someone to help you move forward or remove obstacles, you just need someone to be nice and listen to you, Ganesh is your god. I love him.
Oh, you mean it's not Ceridwen?
Nope, I would go to Ganesh for compassion before I'd go to Ceridwen.
Who's next on your list?
I have another god, this time from Irish mythology, the Dagda. He is the chief of the Tuatha Dé Danann. He's sometimes called the good god, and he's another deity of life, death, and rebirth. He's also the god of the weather and agriculture and growing things, a lot like Cernunnos. He's seen as a loving father, a very wise leader, and a powerful druid. Like Ceridwen, he also has a cauldron, but his is a cauldron of plenty, and he makes sure that no one ever leaves his table hungry.
Now, I think we listed actually more than 10, and I had a problem. I really did because, this was my idea, and then I list like 20. I think that really what it comes down to is, you have your favorites, I have my favorites, but who works with you best? Are you following a certain mythos? It's going to be different for each person, and just because this is my top 10 or your top 10 or some rando on the internet, your top 10 is going to be different based on what you're called to and what is drawn to you. And I think when I looked at my list, it was predominantly Greek and Celtic. I did have Isis on there. I had Odin on there. I actually had Diana, Hermes, and Zeus. Like, that's what I'm called to. But maybe I think the point of this is there isn't necessarily a top 10 that every damn person has to be familiar with. Maybe each one of you needs your own top 10 that you are familiar with.
Even if for no other reason, how wonderful to have 10 different deities that you can go research, because I do love learning stories. I love learning the folklore. I love learning how they're seen in different cultures and how they're worshipped, how they have been in the past and how they are now.
And how they're connected to other deities from other cultures. It's almost like they're kind of the same or similar depending on where you are in the world?
Exactly. Like Lilith, a lot of people thought that she came from Mesopotamian, from the Sumerian lore, before she was part of the Jewish lore. So a lot of times, some of these deities traveled. They may have traveled with people as they went from one area to another, or they did trading. Sometimes deities came
Touch
with
different
them.
regions.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't need to worship deity at all if you don't want to. If that's not part of your practice, that's fine. It's not a necessity. I find that it enriches my practice to learn about them. Some people feel that they'd like to dedicate themselves to one or more deities for a certain amount of time. Shell has dedicated her life pretty much to Hecate.
Dedicated. Yeah, right. I was marked,
She was kidnapped by Hecate, who will not let her go.
right?
But the best thing for you to do is to choose a deity you're interested in, choose an area of the world, choose what you're interested in and learn about that.
But over time, who that is could change, and that's okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Or maybe you only want one and you have no interest in anybody else but one. Again, okay.
Yeah, I'd say you should go learn about more, but you're right. That's okay. It's totally okay.
Some people are drawn just to goddess energy and want nothing to do with God energy because maybe a bad experience in a earlier part of their life with a different religion. We won't talk about that, but they only want to focus on goddesses. Again, okay. I'm still blown away that you think we have such differing opinions on
On
Ceridwen.
Ceridwen. She's such a complex goddess. There's so much to her. I mean, Christopher Hughes wrote a whole book on Ceridwen. She is a very complex goddess of witches, of inspiration, of so much.
Well, actually, side point here, part of the coven I am in, I had to pick deity to focus on, and I actually picked Ceridwen
Oh.
to learn more about her and work with her. And I am starting to get into delving into, I don't know what to say, the depths of her story more so than that I ever have before. So
Oh, very cool. I'm excited to see what you find with that. So we'll have to come back to Ceridwen in like 6 months or something and
yeah,
see how
yeah.
you feel about her then. And you're not wrong. You're not wrong. There is that motherly side to her.
But I agree that I might not have the whole picture because Hecate is really where I have put most of my energy for a long, long time. And I scratched the surface on a lot of other deity, but I've never put the time in like I have with Hecate. And I am trying to do that right now with Ceridwen.
Oh, she's a great one to choose. I like her. I very much like her a lot. So, hopefully, you have gotten some information on gods and goddesses. Maybe it sparked an interest and you want to go check them out a little bit more. I will put some websites and books in the show description, which is, in case you're wondering, we've had a couple people ask. When I talk about the show notes or the show description, just go to wherever you get your podcasts and open up our page and go to the episode. Click on it to see the full episode description, and that's the show notes. Ton of information, and whatever I say is in the show notes is going to be right there.
And, if you have any questions, always feel free to ask. We don't know everything. We're not the end all be all, but if you have a question, we'll do what we can to answer it.
Email us at backonthebroomstick@gmail.com. Send us a DM on our Facebook or our Instagram, Back on the Broomstick. You can also check out our YouTube page, Back on the Broomstick. We have a Reddit group,
Tell them our P.O. Box.
P.O. Box 106, Salem, Massachusetts, 01970. Send us mail there if you'd like to. That information is also in the show notes. So hopefully you guys had a great full moon. If you did not do anything last night, the eclipse isn't still happening, but that energy, that full moon energy is still going on for the next day or so. So go ahead and get out there and get you some good full moon spells going. And next week, don't forget, is the spring equinox. Hopefully you've got something nice planned for that. We'll have another episode for you on Friday. Until then, be wise, be wicked.
Keep it witchy.